Previous lab, you all got a chance to take a look at how to create a program, how to use robot outputs to move a part, as well as do a simple material handling operation. In this lab, we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about specific program points and working with what we call interference points. So we're going to start off the same as the last time, and we're going to go and create a new program. So I'm going to hit select, hit create, then go to options keyboard, hit keyboard, and I'm going to try to make this easy on myself. I'm going to put in A, capitalize it, put in A lab 1. And of course, you can name it as much as you want, or anything you want. Can't be too many characters, but if you put in a higher alphabet letter, it's usually a little bit easier to find. We're going to call this A Lab 1, and I'm going to go hit Edit. So you've seen this before. We have a brand new program template. One of the first points or things that we need to consider is I want to focus on where's my home position or my starting point. So what I'm going to do is actually move our robots maybe just a little bit higher. If everyone looks, we're in the world mode, so remember to hit the coordinate button, make sure we're using the world user frame. And I'm just going to bring my Z positive, hold down shift reset, my Z positive a little bit higher, and maybe I'll center it a little bit to the middle. I'm going to record this point as my home position. So it's my starting point and end point to the program. So if you remember, we go to add move points, and we're just going to stick with the default selections right now and just do joint point 1, 5% fine, and we'll explain those a little bit later on. For my next point that I want to focus on, it's going to be an approach point. So when we approach the work or something that we are going to pick up, we don't want to go right to where the work is being done. We want to hover right above it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move my robot, and I'm going to hover above my part. But I'm going to keep a safe distance so I can make sure that I'm going to avoid any collisions. And that's what we mean by interference points. We want to avoid collisions and avoid hitting objects. We want to make sure that we are doing this accurately. So typically, I would say an approach point is going to be 3 to 4 inches above the part, but of course that varies depending on what you're picking up. And in this scenario, we're going to be picking up an eraser, and our material handling operation is going to put the eraser onto the other side of that box. So I need to actually put in a couple of different approach points and what we also call exit points. So at this point, if I feel confident that I like the position of this, I typically want to keep it relatively above where I'm going to be picking up the parts. If you feel like you're overcorrecting when you're moving the robot, what you can do is actually bring down that speed a little bit, and then you can tap it over and be able to see exactly where you're working. So if I feel like I like this approach point, I'm going to go again, add move points, and then stick with the default. The next point that we're going to add is we call it actually the work, where the work is being done, or where we actually go down to grip the part. So from here, I need to be very aware of moving at a little bit slower speed, because now I'm actually going to approach the part. And one of the things to consider is to make sure your gripper is open. So when I go down to the middle, and when I'm trying to hover right over, probably halfway through the eraser to pick it up, maybe a little bit more. And this is where I'm going to also need to record a point, where we want the robot to be when we grip the part. So I'm going to go to add move point again. At this point, when I have the gripper where I want to do the work and actually grip the parts, I'm not going to add a move point. I'm actually going to go up and add an instruction. And if you remember from before, we're going to go to I/O for input output, scroll down and find robot output, and we're going to, for the fenceless cert card, it's usually always robot output 3 is your gripper, but if you're unsure, you can check the list, and you can scroll down, hit enter, robot output 3 for gripper. And right now, we wouldn't be this far if my gripper wasn't on or open. So what we're going to do is when we get to the point of doing the work, we're going to turn it off. And that's going to close the gripper. If you're unsure exactly if that's the right operation, you can go down to I/O, the button at the bottom, and make sure that your type is robot output or robot I/O. And you can actually see and test it out. Where our gripper right here is, we could turn it off. You can see it closes. We can turn it on, and then it opens. So on is open, off is going to close. To easily get back to our program, just hit select. And you can see my lab that I select is already there. Hit enter, and just remember to scroll down to where you last left off. So if we move forward with, and this is something where you can actually pick up the parts and test it out. So, but I think for this scenario, I'm just going to now move into my exit point. Now that we've defined our grip or where our work is being done in that point, I actually want you to pick up the part, because as we're moving it in this material handling operation, we want to know that we're actually moving in the right direction and not going to run into our interference point. So again, what you can do is go back to your I/O, you can turn off the gripper, and then it closes it, and then go back to your program. And now we're going to program the exit point or the departure point. And with this, I'm going to stay just straight. What you can do is copy the same point that you used as your entry point. Or you can simply go into Z positive and bring that back up over the part. When we like that specific height, you can move over here. And maybe I'm just doing my easy approach, and then I'm going to hit add move point, joint 5% fine. Now here's where we get to we need to be more aware of our surroundings. So there is an obstacle in our way. If I were to move the robot straight on my y-axis, I'm actually going to hit an object, or in a manufacturing facility, it could be a number of other pieces of equipment, or another robot, or the door of a CNC machine. So what we need to add is an interference point, or something that will actually help us avoid other obstacles. So then I go up to well above to avoid any near collisions. And this is why it's important to actually move with your part so you can see the clearance that is needed. And I'll maybe go up a little bit higher. So this would be my interference point. And then so I just go to add move point, and that point's recorded. Now my goal for this operation and for your program is to actually just move that eraser from one side of the box on the cert cart to the other side. So just like I approached the part to pick it up and then recorded a point to actually grip the part and do the work and then exit, I need to do the same thing on the other side. This is where flowcharts and being really think through your programming really become helpful, especially with more complex operations. So here I'm going to record my approach point. And then now I'm going to slowly lower down exactly where I want it to go. And I'm not too concerned about exactly where I don't have any fixtures in place. I'm just laying it down on the table. We're making a simple program where we're going to drop the part. Once I get it to the position where I want the part to be dropped, I need to add in another move point. And then the obvious next step is now we need to actually turn on our gripper so that they open. So I go to new instruction, IO, robot output, and I'm going to choose robot output 3, or if you go to list, you can see gripper, and then robot output 3, we're going to turn on. And then from here, I'm actually going to go into IO and turn my gripper on to simulate this. See that it opens. Go back to my program. If you hold down Shift and the cursor button, it'll actually go all the way to the end to make it easy. And now I'm going to go into my exit point. Record that, just like so. And then from here, we can actually go back to our home position. And again, you can copy points, but I believe we'll cover that later. Here we're just getting the overview of what we need to consider in terms of programming points in a material handling application. Oh, I'm going to add move points. And then we're finished. So now to test out our program, there's a couple things that we can do. I'm going to scroll up to the top. I'm actually going to move my eraser back to the other side. Actually, we can just stop right here and then. Now to test my program, to make sure that I've actually done the right operation, there's a couple things that we can do, and one that make it really safe and helpful. First one that I want to show you is that there's a button here called Step Mode. And Step Mode is really helpful to actually go through each individual line by line. So the robot will move to that line and then stop. So you can see exactly where the robot's going to move, what it's going to be doing, and avoid any collisions. I also recommend using your percentages to move slowly to start and to see if we need to stop the robot from moving. All we need to do is lift up our shift button, or if you let go of the dead man switch, yes, that'll insert a fault, but the robot will stop. But what I'm going to do is turn on this step mode. You can see the light indicator at the top. I'm going to leave my percentages at 50%, but I'm going to keep an eye on that. Dead man switch, shift, and then I have these forward and backward buttons. These are, if I'm at the top cursor of my program, the forward button will actually move the robot to that point. One thing that you might need to remember from our previous labs is sometimes you need to hit function abort all to clear out any previous programs. But for this one, I'm going to hit forward, and we're going to go line by line to see where our robot moves. So that was my home position, was the first point. The next one should be my approach point. Now, as I'm looking at this, I want to make sure I'm lined up. I might even slow down my speed a little bit because my next point is now where the work is actually going to be done. So I'm going to go slow on this, hit the next one. I like where that landed. You can see as you keep moving forward, it even works for the robot instructions. So my next one will be closing the gripper. And then my next point should be my exit point. The next point should be an interference point to avoid our obstacle. And then we're going to repeat the process on the same side. So if it works correctly, I go to an approach point. And then I go to where the part is being placed. I'm going to open my gripper, go back to my exit point, and then I go back to home. These are some of the things that we need to be thinking about when we're doing a simple material handling program.